I want to unpack a little bit about becoming a son, and or a daughter. That's something for all of us. We are in a lifelong process of becoming sons and daughters. Some of you are very confident in your identity as a son or daughter, and others, it's something that's growing because the foundation you had, there is line upon line that needed to be developed. Some things weren't the strongest in your foundation. And so becoming is the act of something coming into existence or undergoing a transformation. And so the Lord took me through a transformation process with Apostle Chuck. The Hebrew word for son is Ben. I think all of you, or most of you, know my son's name is Benjamin, son of my right hand, or son of my hand. The Hebrew concept of son extends beyond a literal biological relationship. It often signifies a relationship, role, or representation, not just a direct offspring. So there's a literal son, a male child, and we saw that today with the baby dedication of Griffin. But there's also a figurative son when someone can represent another, act on their behalf, or embody their purpose. And that's what I want to focus on here. All of us are called to learn to embody a purpose, to serve, to act on someone else's behalf as we go through our life, through the various roles and assignments that we're given. If I know she's on the webcast, if I want to represent Pam Pierce, what are some of the things I'm going to do in representing Pam, or that process? I'm going to understand what motivates Pam. I want to know what her priorities are. I want to know what her giftings are. I want to get to know who Pam is so that if I am called to do something for her, to help her or assist her, I know the track or vein that's going to be meaningful and significant for her. What's most important. I'm not going to try and take a class in accounting to try and help Pam. She's a gardener. She's a wise woman. She values her time, her priorities, her relationships. So I'm going to learn to invest in those types of things. And it was the same thing with Apostle Chuck. I had to learn who he was. He and his family were very different than my family. Keith and Penny. The first time I interacted with the Pierces at a dinner table, it was a very lively, loud, dynamic conversation that wasn't like what I was used to or accustomed to. I saw children interacting with parents in a way that wasn't acceptable in my house. There was discussions, there was contention, there was arguments, there was loud words used. At my home, we didn't really have that at the dinner table. And so I had to learn there are different styles of parenting, there are different relationships, and to grow in my understanding of who Apostle Chuck was. I didn't look like him. I didn't talk like him. I didn't have an understanding of the word like him. I didn't prophesy like him. I didn't particularly have his temperament. I'm not extremely confrontational. Confrontation doesn't bother Apostle Chuck. Sometimes he knows that's the way you get through your door or you get things to change. And so I struggled when I was asked to become his assistant over 27 years ago. How can I represent someone that I'm not particularly like? And that was a snare of the enemy trying to convince me that I had to act the same way or communicate the same way. Now, do I need to communicate the same message that Apostle Chuck's communicating if I'm representing him? Yes. But I'm going to do that in a different way. And it took me years to begin to unpack some of that I didn't have to fit into this box, that I'm not a mini Chuck. He understood my gifts. He knew that I was not a mini Chuck, but that I had other gifts, that others of us have other gifts. There could be other people. Chad could be up here. Others could be up here talking about what it is to be a son or what it is to be a daughter, Shatis. And so it is a process that the Lord takes us through to understand how we communicate and honor someone else that we have been assigned to, or that our portion is to help them advance and move forward. If you're I can look at Richard Schoenemeyer. He works for American Airlines. We're grateful for American Airlines. If he does not want to come into order with his employment there, his supervisors won't be really appreciative of his work. He understands what needs to be done, and he finds the ways to do that, to communicate in the structure and the order of American Airlines. And so I had to began to learn to do the same thing with Apostle Chuck. He, for those that have worked with him or know him, he never locks you in to where you're presently at. When I first started working with him, he didn't see me as that young seminary student. He saw the gifts, and he knew the discipline would define the gift, and it could begin to express itself in ways that would serve the kingdom and would bring me into my destiny. And so when he invited me to become his assistant, I had a choice to accept that call. But then there was a process of becoming a son, becoming someone, a student of who he was, of what it meant to communicate on his behalf, to share his heart, to express his interests, to find ways to get things done that needed to be completed. And so I had no idea what that would entail. None whatsoever, because if I had, I wouldn't be here. I would have not signed on the dotted line. So, I already told you some about the Word. One of my first trips with Chuck, we went to Ann Arbor, and he got in the shower, and when he came out, I was cozied up in the corner of the hotel room at Weber's Inn. I had my Bible out. I was reading the Psalms, and he came out and he said, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm reading my Bible." And he said, "Put it away. Time for reading the Bible's over. You could have done that early." I thought I was a morning person. And when I began serving him, I learned, don't laugh so much. I really did think I was a morning person. I really did. And then I started working for Chuck. And he is someone that's up in the night. He's seeking the Lord. He's communicating with the Lord. And so when I started working with him in Colorado Springs at the World Prayer Center, I thought it was awesome to show up to the office right at 9 o'clock. And that lasted about 2 weeks. And then he said, "Do you realize what time I get in the office?" I said, "A little after 8, I think." He said, "If you're my assistant and you'd want to help me, you would want to come in the office earlier, wouldn't you?" And so he encouraged me that there was a way to align my interests, my schedule with his schedule so that I could serve him better. Another area was prophesying. Apostle Chuck hears. He has ears to hear what the Spirit of God is saying. Thank you, Chad. When I first started working with him, if I'm going to communicate and represent him, he is going to want to know that I can hear Holy Spirit, that I can read the Word and hear the Rhema word, that I am growing in my relationship with the person, the Logos. And so when I first started traveling with him, I would come out, we'd get up early, I would turn on the coffee machine, get him his coffee, I would take the shower, I'd come out of the shower, then he'd take his shower. And as soon as I came out of the shower, he would say, "What's the Lord saying to you today?" That was like asking, what's the price of tea in China? I don't know. My mind wasn't there. And he said, "Well, aren't you talking to the Lord? Don't you hear?" And so he took me through a process. And a good father or mother doesn't scorn you if that process takes time. And so I would come out and he'd say, what is the Lord saying? And I didn't know. I was having to learn to listen for the voice of Holy Spirit. And so I would say, I heard hope. He said, well, that's good. That's one word. You heard a word. Let's build on that word. And he did. And he taught me, he trained me, and that's something that still is developing for all of us. There is a process of growing in our relationship with the Lord, a process of growing in our relationships. And if there is a desire to grow, there are going to be people that the Lord places in our lives that are going to help us grow, that are going to help us understand. And I'm so grateful for Apostle Chuck that he taught me to do that.